Hello everybody and welcome to Anaphylaxis Canada's first Ask Our Youth panel webinar. We plan on having more webinars just like this with a similar theme in the future where we're going to have youth with allergies provide advice and tips to parents of allergic children. We feel the youth perspective is really important to learn from because these kids have a ton of experiences and first-hand knowledge about living with food allergies and have great advice for parents in preparing for the challenging teen years. So welcome, my name is Kyle Dine, and this is our first webinar for the Ask Our Youth series. I myself have multiple food allergies to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, fish, shellfish, and mustard, and I am the program manager for our youth program at Anaphylaxis Canada. If you're not familiar with Anaphylaxis Canada, you can see our website, it's anaphylaxis.ca. We are a national nonprofit that helps those affected by serious allergies through support, education, advocacy, and support for food allergy research. And for any more information about our organization, please visit anaphylaxis.ca. But we're going to really focus today on some of our youth resources, especially that are the ones that are available on our website, whyriskit.ca. This is a website that was developed by our Youth Advisory Panel, and we like to call them YAP. And this is a group of 31 food allergic youth from across Canada, and they come together to help each other, to help others by creating resources about food allergies by sharing their experiences and tips. And I really urge you to visit www.whyriskit.ca to watch videos, to listen to podcasts, and see all the amazing resources that they have come up with. Now, I have to remind everybody before we start that we're not providing medical or legal advice today. If you do have specific questions about your own situation, please consult with your own physician. With that being said, I'd like to introduce the real stars of today's broadcast. And I'd like to start off by asking Lindsay maybe to self-introduce herself and provide a little information about herself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay. I am 20 years old, and I am in my third year of university studying biomedical sciences at the University of Guelph. I am allergic to peanuts, tree nuts, and soy. And I joined YAP because I'm actually really interested in becoming an allergist in the future. And so I thought that joining Anaphylaxis Canada's Youth Advisory Panel would be a really great way to just get more involved in the community of those with allergies. And it's been a really fantastic time to get to know so many people with allergies and help others out there deal with their allergies as well.
That's fantastic. It's great to hear we have a future allergist amongst us. We really can't get enough of those, so that's great to hear, Lindsay. Next up, Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm 20 years old, and I'm studying at Ryerson. I'm studying both accounting and finance, and I'm just allergic to all nuts. I have a couple other, food intolerances. I joined YAP to get connected with other people who are in the same situation that I'm in, and I also think that the initiatives that YAP is pursuing are very important. I wanted to take part in that.
And I can speak directly that Matt has been a great help to the panel since he's joined. And last up, I'd like to introduce Sidney.
Hi, I'm Sidney. I'm 16 and in grade 11. I have allergies to pineapple, coconut, strawberries, and cashews. And I joined YAP because I developed my allergies at 13, so right before high school, and I was pretty much just thrown into high school, no idea of what to do or how to deal with my allergies. So I think by sharing my experiences with other teens and people my age that can help them be able to better their allergies and how they deal with them.
Thanks, Sidney. Now, we have really quite a range of youth on our panel today, from high school students to university students, which hopefully will be able to provide lots of different perspectives. But today, the agenda, really, we're going to do a couple of stories where our panel, they're going to share experiences of a time where they really had a challenge of dealing with something and really highlight the challenges that youth face with allergies. We're going to touch upon some youth-related research. And also some research that we conducted with our YAP panel, trying to provide specific advice to parents. And then at the end, we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. So we'll start off, maybe Lindsay, can you maybe share with the audience a story of a time where you had maybe a close call or a reaction and really what you learned from it?
Sure thing. So in my first year of university, it was my first year. I actually live away from home while I am at school. And I was out at a restaurant with two of my close friends. It was a restaurant I'd never been to before. And I had ordered my meal, and I didn't think there was any issues with it, but I do have my soy allergy is actually to soy protein, which is kind of hidden in a lot of meat products. And so it's very hard for people to understand when you ask them about it. It's not something they're used to looking for in an ingredients list. And so I had an item that had chicken in it. And after I took my first bite, I knew that something was wrong, and I wasn't going into full anaphylactic shock, but I definitely knew that there was something in my food that was causing my body to react, so I just stopped eating. And I didn't really want to mention anything to my friends that I was with because I didn't want to send them into a panic or cause a big scene or anything. But then my friends did notice that I wasn't eating as much of my food and kind of picking around the chicken, so they were obviously a little concerned, and they asked me if anything was wrong, and I told them very calmly that I thought that there was probably something in my food that I might be allergic to, and they responded so well to it. They didn't freak out. They didn't panic. They just kept asking me if I was okay, if I wanted to have some of their food or order something else, or if I just wanted to leave the restaurant or go see a doctor, go to the hospital. So it was a really great learning experience for me because it was good to know that my friends weren't going to react in kind of a crazy, over-dramatic way that I was expecting. And it was really good for me just to know that I have the support of my friends who are really knowledgeable about my allergies and just reacted in a great way.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hear that quite often, that there's that real urge that teens don't want to create a scene when it's a close call or they're having a reaction. But as you highlighted, it's really important to know that your friends are there for you and they're going to help you out in a situation like that. Matthew, do you have a story?
Yeah, so this is pretty recent. I bartend, and the place I work at will generally host events that involves a caterer. Usually, they'll offer the staff food, and, I can ask them, and they can usually give me a pretty straight answer, and it's pretty clear if I can eat the food or not. But recently there was an event, and it was named, I guess, an Indian wedding. And what they had was these golden boxes of food that were closed and sealed. And they're offering me the food. Generally when it's food from another culture, I tend to be a little more careful and cautious. So I was kind of, unsure. So I asked him a few questions, and he, was guaranteeing to me that I'll be fine and there's no nuts and there will be no problem. I must have asked him about 3 or 4 times because, I did have a feeling. So, he said, I'll be fine, no problem. And I opened up the box, and there was nuts on top of whatever was in there. And I looked at him, and I said, these are, whatever it was, cashews or pecans. And he said, yeah, whatever, cashews. And I was, like, okay, I can't eat this. And he kind of looked at me, and he didn't really understand. And I think, what's important here is the fact that, I asked him very clearly, is there nuts in this? I cannot eat nuts for this reason. And he said, you'll be fine. Obviously when I asked him the question, he really had no idea what I was talking about and was just concerned about, giving me the food. Although it was a nice gesture, it was pretty dangerous. And even when I, after the fact, told him, gave it back to him and said, again, this is why I can't eat it, he still didn't really fully understand.
Oh, I think you've really highlighted a problem that many people face, and you ask all the right questions. You can be so vigilant, but you always have to be vigilant, even after you ask those questions. And unfortunately, sometimes, just like you did, you had to second guess someone after you provide them with all the information. Sidney, do you have a story to share as well?
Yes, I do. So back in December, this was my most recent really serious anaphylactic reaction. One day at lunch, some of my friends are going out to get some food, and I said, okay, sure, I'll go along. And my friends are very good with my allergies, but we all kind of just, I don't know if we just were kind of just going along with it. We didn't even think about it, and we went to the restaurant, and I didn't even ask any questions. I wasn't being responsible, and I think often teens put their allergies aside to socialize and fit in, and by the time I got back to the school, I had an anaphylactic reaction to what I ate, and I think it was just a learning experience that you can socialize and be with your friends, but you need to be responsible with your allergies and making sure that you're asking the right questions and still thinking about them while you're socializing. So that was my experience.
Yeah, and I'm really sorry to hear about that, but you really have raised a good point of how important the social side of life is for teens and how that really plays a role with allergies. And it's a perfect segue into some of the main themes we're going to be talking about today, and really the issues that allergic teens face. And like our panel already mentioned, dealing with friends, dining out, traveling, partying, dating, dances, work, public places. All of these are issues that are very specific to teens that parents really need to start thinking about for their children, and really with the goal of developing strategies before the risks present themselves. So preparing for these things in advance is really key. With that, we're going to go into some research and some really interesting data, and I'd love to get our panel's perspective on some of these figures and get their thoughts. The first one is about teens and risk-taking. Now, this was a study where they surveyed teens and tried to find the frequency of when and how much they carry their autoinjector, their epinephrine with them, and if it varies on different activities. And as you see by the stats here, traveling, by far most teens brought their autoinjector with them on trips. But as you go down this list, especially when you get down to going to a friend's home, school dance, wearing tight clothes, or playing sports, this number really drops, and it's quite concerning. Especially we know that you need to carry epinephrine with you at all times. Sidney, you're the youngest person on the panel. You're in high school. Do you have any thoughts of why these numbers might be so low, and can you relate to any of these?
I think they can be so low because I think you're often in the moment and you're just going out and you think that you like to think that you won't run into your allergies at maybe a dance or a football game. So you just think, okay, you're not allowed to bring a bag that night, so you don't need to bring it, but you actually do need to bring it because you can run into your allergies at any time and you just need to have it with you. But I think as teens, it's really easy just to think that you don't need it and that everybody else isn't bringing yours, so you don't need it. So that's just why.
That's really sound advice. And, you really think of restaurants, that's a risky place, and, traveling by yourself. But like you said, when you get into these other situations, you might let your guard down. So it's really, really important to always, parents, remind your kids that it's really important to always have their autoinjector with them, no matter what the situation, because risks can present themselves anywhere. The second part of the study, they looked at how many would eat a food that had a precautionary label on it, like may contain. Unfortunately, 42% would, and as we know, may contain can potentially be dangerous and cause a reaction. But the really interesting stat here is that 68% of teens surveyed believed that educating their friends would make life easier for them if their friends knew about their allergies, but yet less than that amount actually told their friends about their allergy. Lindsay, have you had this situation, or have you told your friends, and do you find that that's made life easier for you?
Yeah, I definitely have. Telling your friends, it just kind of gives you a backup system. I mean, whenever I go out to dinner with my friends or something and food is involved, if I'm kind of not on my game and might forget to mention my allergies to the wait staff at the restaurant, having your friends know about your allergies, they're always there to kind of pick up the slack for you if you forget. And it also does make it easier if you do have one or two close friends who really understand your allergies and know where your auto-injector is kept and how to use it in case of an emergency. You just feel that much safer when you're out with them. But I definitely do, like the statistics, although they might be a little bit scary, it does make sense just because I think for teens to tell their friends about their allergies, a lot of people might be embarrassed by it or might think it's just one extra thing to add that might make your friends not want to hang out with you as much or something like that. So it definitely makes sense that people don't want to tell their friends, but once you do tell them, it makes your life so much easier to have people know about it.
That's great to hear. So the more you get it out there, the easier your life will be, and hopefully the less risk you will face and support you'll have. And one last study that I wanted to touch on, and this one's interesting because they didn't survey teens, they actually surveyed allergists, and the theme was asking them when should teens or youth start taking ownership of their allergies, and when should parents start shifting the responsibility of self-management to their child. And few allergists expected this to happen between the 9 to 11 year range. And as you can see by the stats below, it was more in line with between the 12 to 14 year range. But as you go down this list, you can see that the numbers get lower to 79% thought that self-injection of your own auto-injector would be expected by that time. Matthew, do you think that that's low? Do you think that's accurate? What are your thoughts on that? And maybe you can share when you learned to use your auto-injector.
Well, yeah, to be honest, I think this is, I think it's way too late in the child's life. For me, it was as far back as I can remember, back in grade 1 and grade 2. Maybe I didn't carry it. Maybe the teacher carried it on my behalf somewhere in the classroom, but I was still well aware of what was going on and what the implications were for me if I, in regards to these different things. I think the sooner the better. Then it just becomes sort of a regular, natural thing. And you feel kind of empowered, I guess. Waiting till a late age. My parents to this day still ask me when I leave the house, do you have your EpiPen? Fine. For them, that's just something they've done for the past 20 years. But I think if they just, didn't let me carry or didn't let me take responsibility until a later age, I think at this point in time, I wouldn't care to take that responsibility.
Wow, and that's really important insight. And I think the one key word you mentioned there was empowered. I love that word, in that your parents tried to empower you at a young age to take control of your own allergies. And as you said, as a result of that, you're now taking responsibility. You take them seriously because this was ingrained at a younger age. So interesting perspective, and I think most would agree that this might be a little bit old in terms of transferring responsibility, and that a little younger might be the best way to go about it, to really shift things over gradually, but starting at a younger age. With that, I'm going to look at some of the research that we recently got from our own youth advisory panel, and we want to really ask some in-depth questions about getting advice for parents and how we can make things easier for teens. And the survey had 24 responses, with the majority being female, average age around 19, so just entering college, university age, with the most part having multiple food allergies. And the first subjects we talked about were auto-injectors. And one of the questions we're always wondering about is about how much do parents ask about whether the kids are carrying their auto-injector. Are they nagging too much? I think some people might think so. But in this case, we see that very rarely do our panel members have their parents asking whether they have their auto-injector with them. So, Sidney, as I said earlier, you're the youngest on the panel. Is this something that you have any thoughts on? Do your parents ask you before you go out of the house?
I think definitely, because I'm still in high school, my parents definitely do still remind me in the morning. It's always, do you have your EpiPen? Your auto-injector, and you just have to, I say yes, of course, but I want to be like, no, stop bugging me. But in the end, it is helpful because sometimes I have forgotten, and it is a nice reminder.
So would you say that you're happy that they care and they do provide that reminder? But
yeah, I think it's better that they care and that they're reminding me than I think I would forget if they didn't.
Uh-huh. So that ties really nicely to the next stat, where the question was, when they do ask you where your auto-injector is, how do you mostly feel? And the majority did say happy that they care. A few were frustrated that they don't trust. Some were annoyed, but for the most part, happy that they care. And some other reasons is noted down below. So parents, it is a good thing to remind, but maybe it's something to keep the communication lines open and try to gauge where your child's at with carrying their own, and maybe not overdoing it, but finding that happy medium of trust and balance. The next question was, what helps you the most in remembering to carry your auto-injector? Was it a reminder with parents, or a reminder from parents? No, it's very, very great answer here. It's so routine, I automatically bring it with me. Lindsay, do you find this is true for you?
Yeah, I definitely do. For me, I mean, I'm usually just going to and from school on a daily basis. And so I just always keep my auto-injector in my backpack pretty much at all times because I do have multiple auto-injectors. I will have other ones within the house. So my one in my backpack pretty much stays there all the time, and then I use my other ones to rotate to bring out if I'm going out in a purse or something like that. But yeah, it's never something that really I need reminding about. It's just something that it's always on me at all times wherever I go.
And that's great. It's just so ingrained in you at this point that it's always with you. This next stat is very interesting. All about how your friends find out about your allergies. And you know, I imagine a lot of parents, for the young ones, they're telling the parents of their child's friends, they're telling their child's friends directly. But once you're a teen, this is really interesting, the stat of how do you wish your friends found out about your allergies. The vast majority said by myself, me telling them. Matthew, was this the case for you with your friends? Did you tell them directly, or was it your parents?
No, definitely me. It usually, I mean, for me, it seems to come up pretty often. I think I said before, my auto-injector is in my pocket, and it's usually slightly exposed because of the color of the top of it. It's bright yellow. So I get a lot of people asking me what that is. When they do, I always seize that moment to tell them as much as possible so they are aware of the situation. But because I'm careful, you know, anytime someone offers me food, I'm always, you know, that's really my response right away. Well, I have an allergy, so, you know, and then I go into it. So yeah, it's definitely always me, very rarely my parents, unless it comes up where they're there and I've been offered food and maybe they'll step in, but generally it's always myself.
And Sidney, maybe you can expand on that. When you tell a friend about your allergies, what exactly do you tell them?
Well, usually when I meet someone new or when I have a friend, I usually just say I have allergies, and usually I get quite a great response. You know, people want to know more about it, so it's usually the same explaining, you know, when I got my allergies, what they are, and people are always concerned about have you had your auto-injector, those kind of questions. And I think it's great to let people know because everybody seems to care and want to be there for you, so it's almost like a great support system to have people who care.
Absolutely. Do any of your friends ever get afraid or have a negative response when you tell them? Lindsay, maybe? Can you answer that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a negative response to it. A little bit of fear. I mean, in some people who might know others with allergies, I mean, I have one friend who has a younger sister with allergies, and I know whenever she's around me, she's always not afraid, but very, very cautious about any food we're eating, and she's always looking out for me. So it's never really a bad thing, but some people it is scary for them, especially if they haven't had experience with it before. They don't know what to expect. They don't know how sensitive you might be to your allergens. So it can be scary because it is a life-threatening situation. But, I mean, I just try myself to remain calm and just explain to them as much as I possibly can about what my allergies are and what could happen if I do run into my allergens. But really it's all about how you approach the situation, I think, and when they see that you're calm about it and that you're comfortable with your allergies, you can make them comfortable with them as well.
That is excellent advice. And really, if you present your allergies with fear, you're probably going to instill fear in someone else. But if you do present them calmly and say, you know, matter-of-factly, here's what they are and here's what I need to do to stay safe, here's how you can help, you're probably going to convey that same attitude to whoever you're telling. So fantastic advice. And we have a couple more here that we asked our YAP panel about. And here's the biggie. Here's the million-dollar question. Have your parents ever talked to you about the dangers of kissing with food allergies? And there has been research done that's found there is a risk if you kiss someone who has recently eaten what you're allergic to. So our panel has, for the majority, they said yes, and I'm glad that they did have that talk, and they did tell them the actual risk. You have a few that said no, and I'm glad that they didn't, but for the most part, they're glad that they did have that discussion, or no, but they wish they did. Do any of you, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot with this question, but do any of you have anything to add to that slide?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really important, and every once in a while there's always a story in the newspaper about this sort of situation, and I think when there is, that's a good opportunity to take advantage of it and say, look, look what happened. It can happen. It is a real risk, and you've got to be aware of it, right? It's reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to just move on to one more slide here, and then we're going to open up to questions. I see questions that are already starting to come in, which is great. And the last one, how do you think parents should teach children about their allergies and what they need to do to stay safe? And as you can see just with all of these answers below, there are some that really stand out, but I think overall it says a variety of different ways to communicate with your children can all be beneficial. But one being, talk with them about allergies regularly. That was really popular, and just really keep those lines of communication open with your teen, with your child, to let them know that you can always trust them, you can always talk to each other about this. Also, I found this very interesting, have them meet or speak with older kids with food allergies, in almost like a mentorship role where you can have an older kid answer their questions, provide them with advice. And at this point, I should probably do a plug for Anaphylaxis Canada's youth program, because this is one of the main elements that we really try to strive for, is to have that type of advice from older kids to younger kids. So I do advise, visit whyriskit.ca. We have a lot of resources that are written directly from big kids. So a lot of great stuff there. And also, just being on our YAP panel, there's lots of opportunities to connect with older kids and kids your own age, but also just to share experiences. And in this year, we are going to be launching our mentorship program. So something to stay tuned about. If you want more information about Anaphylaxis Canada's programs, I suggest that you sign up to their communications. If you go to anaphylaxis.ca and click join, you'll find out all about how you can stay in the loop with all the great programs Anaphylaxis Canada has. So that wraps it up with the research, but we'll now get into the Q&A with our panel box. If you listen to this after the fact, please feel free to email your questions directly to Anaphylaxis Canada, and our email address is right on our website. The first question is regarding bullying with food allergies, and unfortunately we have heard stories of bullying going on, or teasing, just because someone has a food allergy. I know this is a sensitive topic, and would any of you have any type of experience with this, maybe yourself or you've seen someone deal with this, and what advice would you have?
I can talk a bit about this. I mean, when I was younger, as far as I remember, I don't really remember experiencing any sort of bullying because of my food allergies. So when there was one incident when I was in high school, actually, that happened, and it was a group of boys that I was fairly good friends with, and they were eating, I don't really remember what type of nut it was, but it was some nut with a shell on it. And they thought it would be funny to start throwing these shells at me and my friends, who were a couple tables over in the cafeteria. And I knew that they knew about my allergies, but I guess they really just didn't quite understand the severity of them. So they thought it was funny to be throwing these nutshells over at us. And of course, my friends and I started freaking out, and everybody, a lot of people were really great at standing up for me and saying, like, hey, listen, like, this is really serious, like, Lindsay is deadly allergic to these nuts, so you need to stop. So that was a tough experience for me. I mean, especially coming from people who I thought that I could trust and I thought understood my allergies. But I really think what it does stem from when it comes to bullying is that people really just might not understand the severity of being anaphylactic to any sort of food. So I think that in dealing with that, I just kind of went over and I talked to them and said, hey, listen, like, I know you might think this is funny, but it really isn't, and it really hurt my feelings that you did this to me. And then just tried to explain to them how serious my food allergies were and that stuff like this, like, I can't tolerate that kind of behavior. So if that's how you're going to act, then you really shouldn't kind of be my friend. But they were really understanding and apologetic after I spoke to them, and they kind of understood that this was something that was could be life-threatening for me.
And that's really great advice. And I think you really hit it on the head there, that some people just don't fully understand allergies. They just don't get it. What they find funny, you and I don't find funny about allergies, and they're just not on the same level. And I really have to hand it to you. You really handled it in such a great way to actually confront them, but also with the right information. And it wasn't trying to get even with them, but you really were mature about it and tried to help them understand that, one, it's important, and B, it hurts your feelings. And that's really big of you to say that to someone. But in a situation where you feel like you don't have control of the situation, you might not be able to handle it so nicely as you did. What would you recommend to maybe younger kids that are having a problem with bullying? Lindsay?
I would recommend, I think the first and most important thing is having close friends that you can trust and are aware of your allergies. That way, if you are ever presented in a situation where somebody is bullying you or making fun of you, you might have your friends there for kind of immediate backup. And if it comes to a situation where you and your friends just can't handle it and the other kids who are bullying you just don't get it and aren't listening, then at that point you definitely need to make a teacher aware of the situation if it's at school. And of course go home and talk to your parents about it as well. Just really emphasizing the fact that it's nothing to be ashamed of if somebody's bullying you or making fun of you, and that it really is a serious situation that does need to be handled properly, just like bullying for any other reason would be handled. So it's definitely something that the more people you make aware of it, the better support system you'll have, and hopefully you can diffuse the situation that way.
Great advice. You really do have to speak up, and if you feel it's beyond your control, you need to tell an adult, a teacher, a principal, someone that can really help you out and be an advocate for you. One really interesting question that just came in, and I think this is perfect for Matthew, because Matthew told me earlier that he's planning a trip to Singapore, which is a little daunting for many of us that deal with food allergies to go to that side of the world. But Matthew, maybe you can handle this question. Someone was wondering about experiences with traveling or backpacking overseas, and how do you deal with that? How do you prepare, especially when there's different languages involved and different cuisines? So maybe you could provide some insight of what you're doing right now to prepare for your big trip overseas.
Well, the first thing is definitely research. And if you're going overseas and you're moving around, it's probably going to be tough to look into all the different restaurants in the area. It may not be realistic. So I definitely recommend understanding what the culture is like over there and what do they use in the food, what are the primary ingredients, and that's definitely the first step. Secondly, I'd probably write out whatever the language is that they speak over wherever you're going. Write down on a piece of paper, or in my situation, I'm often traveling with my mom, and she will know the main words. She knows what she has to know, and she can usually communicate all right no matter where we go. But you should definitely have some way of communicating with the people over there. One thing you can do, and I know nowadays with social media, there is different, I don't know the name of them, but apps and different websites where restaurants in other parts of the world are designated to be safe, not safe, or safe for different allergens. So again, it all ties back to researching and looking into the place you're going to. On airplanes, which is often a big problem. I don't know if you want me to talk about this.
What do you do in advance before you go on an airplane? Because I imagine a lot of parents are worried about that.
Well, I always call the airline beforehand and ask them all the relevant questions, tell them about my situation and if they can accommodate it or not. And then once again, when I get to the airport, I'll speak with, at the gate, whoever's staying there is in charge of greeting people and taking tickets. And then I'll ask again once I'm on the airplane, to make sure the person who's going to be helping me is again aware. And even when I'm checking in at first, it'll be mentioned to them. So again, you're asking on 4 different occasions, and you really should be all right. What I do to make my life easier is I pack all my stuff, whatever, autoinjector, Benadryl, everything in a plastic bag. So when I go through security, there's no, they don't ask me any questions or think. I have something dangerous with me right there on the front, the top of my knapsack. I take it out, throw it in a bin, and it goes to the X-ray machine. But again, it's all preparation, research,
you just have to
and
be very prepared. And I have to ask you, you bring your own food. You don't eat airline food, right?
You know what? I do both. I always have granola bars and stuff with me when I travel. That's automatic, and fruit, just in case. But I do eat airline food if it can be guaranteed, right? Again, you have to ask and see what they say. I know.
Do your research, absolutely. These are all really great tips, and depending on your allergies, you just have to look into the airline, their allergy policies, what type of food they do serve on board, and really call ahead, do your research. For some people, they might feel comfortable with airline food, but I know for the most part, it's very wise just to stick to your own food. And before we move on to another subject, I know Lindsay, she's traveled across Europe for a total of 6 weeks. Lindsay, is it possible for someone with many food allergies to travel the world?
It totally is, and that's one of the things that I'm a huge advocate for, is traveling with food allergies. I traveled a lot with my family when I was younger, and then when I was in high school, I got the opportunity to go on a 6-week trip through Europe while getting high school credits for my grade 12 year. And it was something that my parents were very hesitant about letting me go on, but we did. We spoke to my allergist, and we strategically chose a trip where I would be going to places where I wouldn't necessarily be running into my allergen a lot. So I went to England, France, Switzerland, Germany, and Prague. And these were fairly safer places. I was able to stay away from kind of any Oriental cuisine and any seafood as well. So yeah, it's definitely possible, and as Matt said, it's really all about preparation. For me, there's a bunch of different companies that you can find online that will actually make little laminated cards that you can get different phrases translated into the language of where you're going. And so a lot of them, I've got ones for every different place that I was going for all the different languages, and they would essentially translate into different things like, I need to seek medical attention, where's the closest hospital, ranging to also ones that you could give to waiters and waitresses at restaurants, saying that, I can't have any food with nuts in it, and they would have pictures and different symbols, which is really helpful because especially in Europe, a lot of people don't understand food allergies there because it isn't as common as it is here in North America. So I found that really helpful, and just bringing your own snacks and stuff too is always a great way to just be prepared.
Well, that's great, and preparation is definitely key, and it sounds like you were very prepared having your allergy translated. That's fantastic. So all great advice for traveling, and it's great to know. This is really inspiring to know that you can travel the world despite having multiple food allergies. The next question, this is a really interesting one. Do any of you feel that you are identified only by your allergies? So do you feel that people only think, when they think of you, they think of allergies first? And if maybe if you don't feel that way, what advice would you give to someone that might be having trouble with telling their friends who they really are and having them see past their allergies. Sidney, do you have any advice on that?
The way I see it is that, like we've said before, it's just a lot of people not knowing about allergies. So I think people are just unsure, and I think if you just prove to people that you can socialize and you can go out and do things with your allergies, then they'll probably think of you more as that person that they did something with rather than that person that they couldn't invite because that person had allergies.
Yeah, and Matthew or Lindsay, do you have anything to add to that of how to let people know who you really are and that you're not defined by your allergies?
Oh, sorry. You can go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. All right. Well, I mean, for me, I guess now I think about it, yeah, I think there's some people who, that's how they think of me. I mean, that's something that's associated with me due to its importance. I've never really thought about it as a negative thing. I think it's good that, certain people are so aware of it. On the other hand, I have very good friends who they don't remember it. I have to remind them, on a daily basis when, the situation arises, which I much rather be, associated with my allergy so strongly than, have people, not know about it or not remember it at all. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if someone's feeling that way, I've never really thought about it myself, but I think over time, people, again, the longer your friends know about it, it'll just become natural, and then they won't think about it anymore. It'll just be what it is.
Yeah, and I think you're really right there, Matt, in that, as time goes on, you might have some difficulties when you're younger, and people, young children might get kind of fixated on someone's difference. But as you do get older and, people get to know who you really are and what your skills are and what you're good at and your personality, things like allergies or asthma, it's something that they know you have it, but it doesn't define you. So, I think overall for the young ones out there, as you get older, things definitely will get easier as people get to know you and know that you're more than just your food allergies. We're going to do one more question, and then we'll do something fun just to end things off. But for the last user-submitted question, and this one, it might be a little too private, it might be too personal, but inquiring minds want to know, how did you handle your first kiss? And don't feel obliged to answer, but does anybody want to take that one on? How did you handle your first kiss?
I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, I honestly, it might be sad to say, but I can't remember precisely what my first kiss was.
Okay.
But I think I can kind of maybe just speak to the topic of kissing in general. I mean, when I am starting to see someone or whatever, before we kiss, I usually try and make sure that my allergies have been brought up. It's not necessarily something that I say right when I'm meeting somebody for the first time, being like, hey, my name is Lindsay, and I have allergies. But it is something that I try to bring up to people as I'm getting to know them, or more in the friend stage before you might start dating. And if I ever were to be in a situation where it hasn't come up and somebody's leaning in for the kiss or something like that, it just forces you to just kind of blurt it out, even though it might be awkward and might ruin the moment or something, but it's definitely something you need to kind of throw in there and just say, oh, like, by the way, have you had any, like, for me, I would really just say, like, have you had any nuts? Like, have you eaten any, like, peanut butter or anything today? Just because it is something that can be, like, potentially very dangerous for you if they have just had a peanut butter sandwich for lunch that day. So although it might be awkward, for your own safety, it's really something that you kind of just have to get it out there, and I just try and kind of, like, make a bit of it, not a joke of it, but I mean just try and, like, laugh it off and make it something not super serious, but it is important to tell people about it. Fantastic.
And one last quick question here, and let's do a lightning round here where you can answer in one sentence. I know all of you are not afraid of using your autoinjector. why not? For someone that's out there that might be, a child that might be very afraid of using it, they might fear that it might hurt. Why should you not be afraid of using your auto-injector in an emergency? Sidney?
Because it can save your life.
Yeah, because it can save you. Matthew?
Yeah, the alternative isn't too great, so yeah, you don't have a choice.
Just you have to brave through it, and it's from experience, I can actually tell you it really doesn't hurt that much. The feeling that you get when you start to be able to feel better is amazing. So definitely not something to fear. And Lindsay?
Yeah, I mean, when I always have my friends who kind of look at my EpiPen and freak out, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I could never stab myself with a needle that big," I just kind of say to them, well, I'd rather stab myself with a needle than die. So
yeah.
Although it's a morbid alternative, I mean, that's just kind of the severity of it. So that's how I always phrase it to people who ask.
Yeah, you would definitely want to use the auto-injector before worse consequences come into play. And you just really want to feel better after you have such a serious reaction. All right, so here's my last question, and this one is from me to my panel here. If you were to give one piece of just golden advice to parents of young children that the parents might be starting to think about the teen years or getting anxious about them, what's that one piece of advice that you would like to give them about getting their child ready for being a teenager? We'll start off with, how about Matthew?
You got to talk to them about it. And it has to be brought up at some point, and it has to be a serious discussion, and it has to be consistent. It can't be something I talk about once. It should be, the more often the better. That's definitely for sure.
Absolutely. Lindsay?
Yeah, my one piece of advice would just be to try and make your child responsible for their allergies as soon as possible. Not saying put all your trust in them when they're 8 years old and going off to school, but I mean definitely from an early age, just starting to get them to look at labels on food and check for their allergens, or getting them to feel really comfortable about speaking to waiters and waitresses at restaurants, just so that when it does come the time when they're going out into the world without you guys with them, that they feel comfortable about talking to other people about their allergies and handling them, and then it also makes you feel a lot less stressed and less worried when they're out there by themselves.
Yeah, really empowering them at an early age. It's great. And lastly, Sidney, what's your piece of golden advice?
Well, Matt and Lindsay pretty much covered it, but I would just say pretty much, like they said, just talk to them regularly and just making them responsible. And so by the time they're older and they're on their own, that they've got it covered and they know pretty much everything about it.
And this is all great advice. And really, to recap, help your child become responsible at an early age. Start early and gradually. You don't want to scare them right away, but gradually shift ownership of managing food allergies to your son or daughter, and work with them along the way. Keep the lines of communication open, and talk to them about all of the situations we've talked about today to really get them prepared for life with more responsibility. Great job, panel. You've really done great. Lindsay, Matthew, and Sidney, I wanted to thank you for doing an excellent job today. I know I put you on the spot with some tricky questions, but you've done a great job, and I hope many people out there can learn from your experiences and your knowledge, and especially younger kids, that they can hopefully become inspired to know that they can travel the world. They can explain their allergies to friends. They can explain their allergies to a new date before the big first kiss. So you really provide a lot of inspiration, and I want to thank also everybody out there who's listened today. Thanks for joining us. This is our first in hopefully a long series of webinars where we ask teens exactly what it's like to live with allergies during these difficult years. For more information, I mentioned before, but Anaphylaxis Canada's website, anaphylaxis.ca, has lots of information. Also, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and for more youth-specific resources, please visit whyriskit.ca. We have a new Facebook and Twitter account with Virus Hit where we do have our YAP members on there communicating with teens. So any questions that teens might have, maybe it's a good idea to go on there directly. It is moderated by Anaphylaxis Canada, but it is a lot of great advice coming right from teens. And they also have a blog too, which is just phenomenal. Great stories coming right from teens directly. So I definitely encourage you to visit. But I wanted to thank everyone again for joining, and we hope to have you join us again in the future. Thank you.